Hello, everyone, and welcome to the MakerDAO Scientific Governance and Risk Meeting number 124, taking place on Thursday, January the 14th at 1700 UTC. Welcome, everyone. This is the MakerDAO Governance and Risk Meeting. I'm the MakerDAO Governance Facilitator. My name is Long for Wisdom. So as always, we've got a bit of an agenda to get through. We've got some general updates. I don't think we have any specific segments this week, so we'll do some updates and then go into some discussion and QA such stuff. Kind of general ground rules. Please feel free to interrupt and talk and chat. We generally want to hear from you. So yeah, please don't be shy to contribute. All right, I think that pretty much covers the introduction. I guess I'll mention again that the meeting time has changed to 1700 UTC. It will be this time going forwards. I think everyone's kind of got the message now, but just in case. All right, let's move into weekly updates then. I'll start with governance. So I did actually prepare a governance update today, separately from governance at a glance. So lucky all you. Also, one advantage of the meeting being 1 hour later is that I can now actually tell you the results of the polls on this meeting because they don't finish 1 minute before. So yeah, polls this week. We had inclusion polls for, I believe, 7 proposals. All but one of those passed, I believe. I believe the only one to not pass was the declaration of intent for Maker Protocol insurance cover from Nexus Mutual. The others were passed. We had 2 Oracle-related polls, whitelisting set protocol on a bunch of oracles and whitelisting Gnosis on a bunch of oracles, both of which passed. We had an onboarding poll for UniV2 WBTC ETH liquidity pool token, which also passed. We had the rates proposal, which passed with 70k, which is more than we usually see. I was impressed to see that much. We also saw 70k on the inclusion poll for crop join, so that gives some idea of the popularity of that with maker holders. We also saw the increasing of the system surplus buffer poll pass, adjusting the flat auction parameters pass based on last week's discussions. And then we saw the investigating the implementation of the WBTC B vault type with a lower liquidation ratio also pass. So that'll be added to the collateral sheet soon. And we'll see some of these other changes, in the executive tomorrow. All right, so that's poll outcomes. In terms of what governance has been going on, what's been going on in governance, my main focus for the last little while has been onboarding, specifically pros and Eli. That process seems to be going fairly well so far. I'm looking forward to getting both of them involved more heavily. Most of you may not have seen Eli too much yet, but he's going to be around a lot more in February. So in general, governance is going okay. So maintenance tasks, by which I mean kind of running this meeting, running polls each week, running the executive each week, is taking up most of my time, meaning some things are slipping, like writing the documentation I've been talking about, parameter docs, reviewing stuff other people are writing. I'm kind of confident that having pros and Eli coming on is going to help mitigate this pretty soon, so I'm not too worried at this stage. So David Utribin and Charles St. Louis, there we go, forgot your second name for a second, have continued to take the lead on MIPS work. Again, maintenance seems solid, the process is working fairly well. Recently, we've been planning on working on a MIPS portal, which will allow the community to more easily access and navigate around MIPS. Juan's leading that project, and we'll have kind of more to share about it soon. Not quite at the point where we have nothing concrete to show, but that should be coming soon. So I think that's the governance stuff. So we'll move on to pros for governance at a glance, I believe.
Awesome. Yeah, so governance at a glance, 3-point summary for maker holders this week. We did see a decent amount of liquidations with the volatility in ETH. So that did bring the total DAI supply down to 1.4 billion after kind of peaking at an all-time high there. With that, we saw demand for our PSM with the USDC hit its maximum as well here recently, though there is still plenty of room in the legacy USDC A vaults. And the DAI VWAP is looking really strong, with most of the trades occurring between like $0.999 and $1.002. So really happy to see that. There have been some neat discussions on the forum this week, including adjusting the box parameter. That one came to us from One by Law and Order. Really interesting discussion about how now that our DCs are much higher, we might want to reevaluate the sizing of the box parameter. We did have a question post coming to us from Blue Cat about what would happen if DAI were to lose its peg and go to $2, kind of questioning the pricing in particular with liquidity pools there. And then I brought a informal poll to us about some code that Yaron wrote over at B Protocol, which would allow rebates for the gas fees on people calling Byte on smaller vaults. So go check that out if you haven't. Still plenty of signals carrying over from our update last week. The first three I'm going to cover here could end tomorrow if they're not extended. So do make sure you get over there and give your voice. First one is about increasing that dust parameter. Came to us from Monet Supply and is asking if we want to raise the dust parameter above the 500 DAI. That's the minimum DAI debt that a vault user can carry. Next, we've got a signal coming to us from Primrose, about the adjusting the debt ceilings, kind of in concurrence with the update on stability fees from last week. And the third one that could end tomorrow came to us from Long for Wisdom, asking about rolling out the debt ceiling instant access module to the current and future vaults. For those of you aware, we do have that going right now for ETH-B and has been used quite frequently. So that's pretty exciting. And the last one is a carryover from last week. I had Hexnaut, Sam M, talk about the signal request for the interim DAO operating budget. I believe that's going to continue for about 5 more days. So go ahead and make sure you get over there and give your voice. There's still a few ongoing projects and people looking for help as well. So check out the Governance at a Glance post and follow those links. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you very much, Pros. Awesome, as last week. All right, I think that pretty much covers governance. So Tim, you just asked how much more participation do we need for DCIM? So the reason that I was kind of pushing for more people to respond on that is because it was only 5 days long. I think there were less than 30 when I last checked. So I'd normally want to see like at least 30. But as you say, given that like literally no one's voting no, we'll probably take it next week anyway, even if we don't see more than 30. All right. Okay, let's move on to smart contracts then. Chris, can you give us an update?
Yeah. So today I'm horribly unprepared. We've been very busy and liquidations up. You guys still there? So my internet connection's unstable.
You're cutting out a little bit, but yeah. maybe we're good. Maybe try turning the video off or something.
Well, so I'm going to assume that I'm good. We've been busy with liquidations 2.0, and we've sort of kicked off and are starting. Ooh.
All right, let's maybe come back to Chris once he has a chance to sort out his stuff.
Okay, can you guys got me now?
Yeah, saying, do you want us to come back to you? Yes, I think it might be delayed as well. Let's go with I guess oracles first, and then we'll come back to smart contracts.
Cool. Yeah. So as Long for Wisdom mentioned earlier, we had 2 Oracle proposals pass. and they were for about excuse me. They were for about 5 different oracles apiece. So that was, I believe, Set Protocol and Gnosis. So it's encouraging to see that, after having been longtime customers, they're trying to expand, and the first people they look to for oracles is us. So we're definitely building some customer loyalty there. So that's really great to see. On the Starkware side, so DYDX has a pending proposal for 17 oracles with the catch that they want them on L2, right? They don't want them on mainnet. So work on that has been going underway. We expect to have the release deployment in testing by the end of this week. And then after about 2 weeks of testing, I think we could feel pretty comfortable deploying that. And that'll align nicely with the launch date that DYDX has planned for their new platform. We also got some leads, courtesy of Lev, for some auditing firms for the Uniswap LP Oracle. So the smart contracts team and I and Amy are going to be meeting with them next week to kind of discuss the scope and terms. So hopefully that all goes well. They indicated that they would have time starting at the beginning of February, which is much earlier than I can guarantee you any other auditing firm would have taken on such a project. So I don't want to count the chickens before they hatch, but it's looking pretty good. And if we can get the audit done, in the first half of February, and then implement any of the changes that they cite, we could potentially be looking at raising debt ceilings on the excuse me, on the LP Oracle, on any of the LP tokens by, say, end of February. So that'll be really huge. So on that note, right, there was a forum poll, a signal kind of a request in the forum, right, to raise the debt ceiling on the ETH DAI-ETH A LP token. And so the community had kind of voted that they wanted, I think it was like either a 10 mil debt ceiling, or I think even 12 million.
I think it was 12, yeah.
I'm not sure. Okay, 12. But Primož and I were of the opinion that that's quite a big risk, to set the debt ceiling that high, in one go, especially given that we're not super confident yet about the new LP token Oracle code. But the fact that we launched this, I think end of December, and it's been not quite a month, but almost a month, and nothing bad has happened yet. Our confidence has increased a little bit, and so we are prepared to get more exposure to the LP token Oracle, just not quite 12 million yet. So I think, Primož and I kind of think that the direction to go here is not really to raise the debt ceiling on DAI-ETH A. It's really to onboard some of the other large LP tokens like USDC ETH and wrapped BTC ETH, and kind of give those also the low 3 million debt ceiling. And that way we kind of set ourselves up for success, hopefully by the end of February, when all that's really left is to then, crank up the dial on the debt ceilings for all of those pending kind of the successful audit. That kind of sets us up for success, rather than trying to jack up the DAI-ETH debt ceiling now, and then, come end of February, be like, okay, now we can start adding more LP tokens, right? And that'll take, a month or so, right? So this kind of seems like the better long-term plan for success. But we recognize that the community really wants to use DAI ETH, right? Because the debt ceiling's been full basically from day one. Yeah, I think that's I think that's it from the Oracle side for this week.
Great, thank you very much, Nick.
Yeah, I could probably talk if you want me to do the smart contracts.
Can I
Yeah,
just
please
ask
do, yeah.
before Oracles is done, Nick, do you have an update on the new Silver 2 Oracle assessment? I think if we're still aiming for the 29th governance spell, it would need to be out this week, right?
Yeah, I'm still on track with that. I'm hoping to have it out by Sunday.
Thank you. Cool.
Yeah. Good. That reminds me, Lucas. I'll mention you or MIP22 when we get there. So yeah, so smart contracts. I usually I'm a little more prepared with exactly what we've worked on, but we have been sort of in audits and all over the Liquidations 2.0 code base. So I think everyone would agree that Liquidations 2.0 is probably the top priority right now. So it's the sort of high priority interrupt. Anytime there's Liquidations 2.0 work to do, we're going to end up doing that. And so this week we kicked it off with PwC, who's auditing us, and I think later we have a kickoff with QuantStamp, and then I think later towards the end of February even we have a kickoff back then too. So anyway, I wanted to let's just say we worked on MIP21 this week, and we were hoping to have it in Covan on Wednesday, but MIP21 is still missing unit tests for it. So we're kind of hoping to get those unit tests in before we end up like putting it into Covan and committing to it. So I think MIP21 is going to slip at this point. And but once we get those unit tests and everyone can sort of final review the overall thing. I mean, right now all the tests we have are working. It's like we're like 99.5% of the way there. Just need to like dot that I, and we've got MIP21 ready to go, which will then segue into MIP22, who I think MIP22's been doing a pretty good job. They've got a bunch of tests already, but I need to cycle back and see. We gave some feedback on the original MIP22, and I need to see whether or not all of that feedback was addressed, and then I think we want to lift some of the tests that we have for MIP21 into MIP22. So those are the sort of holdups for those MIPs. But we're working on those, and of course, like I said, with a higher priority being Liquidations 2.0 as it comes along. As far as other collaterals, I think Emilio ended up working on the LP token, so LP Uniswap V2 LP for, I think it was USDC, is that right? Yep.
Yes, USDC.
Yep, so that one's ready for Covan, and then Tanner and I started working on the LP token for FWBTC. And I think we're optimistic that next Friday, both those LP tokens will be available. That sort of jives with what Nick was suggesting as well. So aside from that, I don't have any of the other like normal stuff I'd rattle off for smart contracts, but we're really busy over here. Things are going well. Any questions?
I do want to jump in there and add with the real world asset adapters. We've got two MIP21 and MIP22, which are two real world asset proposals, but they're very different approaches. And if we want to scale real world assets to any length, I mean, right now we can put these bespoke adapters on there, and add these real world adapters. But if people are going to integrate dashboards and backstop protocols and things like that, if we want to have any hope of scaling this up, we need to find a way to standardize these adapters. So we will be kind of reviewing MIP22, I think, once we finish up MIP21 and see what efficiencies we can gain by bringing those two together. Ideally, we'd like to get to a point where we can just kick these things off like we kick out a normal collateral. But right now we've got this very bespoke process that's not scalable at all. So give us a little more time to work on that. And then, yeah, we had to hold the red card up this week because of the unit tests on MIP 21. The team probably isn't going to have time to work on those unit tests, but I think there are some other actors in the community, namely like Will or Lev or maybe Sam. There's contract funds available to take care of that if you guys want to get that out. So I'll shut up now. Thanks.
And maybe one thing to say about MIP 22 is, right, there's I think 7 MIP 6 proposals that want to make use of pretty much MIP 22 or an improved version of it if we are improving it along the way. So I think hopefully we can get to some scale there. That is definitely the idea.
Yeah, MIP 22 will be reusable for all of those, that same sort of format and style. So I think that's good. I think what we'll do is we want to take the lessons we learned from 21 and 22 and come up with a sort of proposal that, you know, an overall like generic MIP that will work for most real world assets, so that we can use that sort of template and really knock these things out.
That's cool. Hey, I have like one question, and I thought this one might be interesting for the governance community in general. I mean, I know we don't really concern ourselves too much with Kovan, but how is like Maker, like the Maker test instance managed in Kovan, and like who's actually doing something with it? Are there several? And like what's sort of the testing process also for like people that are integrating that want to test with it? I think, yeah, like I couldn't actually find any information about that online.
Yes.
Maybe I can chime in here. If
Sure.
you go to changelog.makerdao.com, there is a Kovan branch tracked there where you can see all of our addresses on Kovan. We do have internal teams and tech op teams that use it, especially with new collateral types. They need to test out Oasis and make sure that, you know, everything works there. I don't know how that's going to work with the real world assets because they're authorized liquidation processes. But yeah, we do use those internally. We've got a tech ops team that maintains it, and that's going to be an interesting discussion to have with the community at some point too on maintenance of all of our processes and keepers and things like that. So
Yeah,
I'm not
so who has the
bring that up
authority
now.
on the I guess the hat in the
yeah.
so who's the authority in that system? Yeah.
So the smart contracts team has enough MKR to basically Kovan MKR to vote for stuff. So we're MKR whales at least somewhere. So what'll happen is when we're ready to do MIP 22, when it's ready to go in like the sort of lead up to the executive where we would want to push it to mainnet, we'll actually build the entire spell for it. So all the MIP 22 stuff, we'll lift all of the integration tests you've written, all that code, and we'll put it into this one Kovan spell. And that spell sort of mirrors the spell that we'll make in mainnet. So we'll do the sort of heavy review on that, and any other changes we make, we'll push that right into the chief, and then we have the same type of keeper that manages mainnet is managing casting stuff in Kovan, so it'll lift it and then cast it, and then we can test in Kovan with it live. So that's the process. So I would say if you want to actually see how it integrates with the system now, the only way to really do that is either to deploy a separate instance of MCD in Kovan or to deploy it on a testnet. And you can use DSS deploy scripts to do that. But that's probably a lot of engineering work that I wouldn't do. But you know, it's up to you guys if you want to do some sort of like pre-testing in a testnet. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, so I mean, for integration testing, I think we'll skip it, and thankfully we can use RPC testing for mocking out, giving ourselves enough MKR to at least in our tests manipulate Kovan and mainnet DSS, so that's fine. But I think we're getting too much into the technical details, but thanks for answering.
Sam had one correction, which was that next week is the community executive. And so the week after, it will be the executive that we work on, so.
Yeah, I would say we were still kind of figuring out what we should put in the community exec, whether we should put some of the regularly scheduled stuff in there. So yeah, I don't think we know for sure what's going to go in that yet, but it might include the uni obbies and stuff, and it might not.
Chris, just for clarity, the target though for MIP 21 is next week?
I think it's going to slip from that target because we want to have it in Covan the week before, so it'd be the week after.
Okay.
So let's cycle back and see if we can get someone to actually write the unit tests for MIP 21.
Thank you.
And it's looking good, Matt. It's really looking good right now. So.
Okay, cool. If that covers smart contracts related questions, I think we should move on. One more thing.
Actually had a question about governance. So I had brought up and then didn't have the time to make the post about removing the MOMs from the stablecoins, so that you can't instantaneously circuit break the MOMs. Is that in the governance process?
It is not, because I'd forgotten about it until this point. If you want to write up a post, or someone can write up a post saying what it is and why we're doing it, then I can put it on the list for the exec for tomorrow. Assuming you guys are ready to do it tomorrow, or we can do it next week or whatever.
Yeah, we can do it tomorrow. I'll see if I can get to that today.
Yes, just to summarize what that is again, we're just we want to remove permissions for the liquidations MOM to allow liquidations to be activated for stablecoins without waiting for the DSS Gov. Sorry, not the DSS Gov. Without waiting for the DS4's time lock thing.
Yeah.
There we go. Remembering all the terms, it's tricky for me today.
Oh yeah.
If I can bring up one more smart contracts thing, it's mentioned in the sidebar. Next week will be kind of groundbreaking. We intend to have a community executive with the community writing their own spell. I want to point out that the smart contracts team does intend to review this spell, with the exception of anything that we are not allowed to review for reasons. So keep that in mind. We do intend to review the community spell that's going out next week, and we'll comment on it. But this will be like the first community crafted and organized spell. So that's kind of a exciting thing.
I mean, technically we sort of did one the first time, but yeah, you're right. It's kind of the first time it's going to be integrated into the process more formally, I guess. Okay, let's move on to risk then. Viraj, do you want to give us an update?
Yeah, so we don't have a huge amount of updates this week because we're mostly working on the risk modeling and value at risk calculations. Post about that is following shortly by Andy, potentially one presentation. We did publish the BTC evaluation, as mentioned last week, which you can all read about it on forums. I have also made 2 signals this week. One is for debt ceiling changes and the other one for flap auctions adjustments. What is maybe relevant to mention here is that flap auctions adjustments won't be effective because there was a confirmed vote to increase surplus buffer to 10 million, which is also something I proposed, but I still think everybody agrees that flap auctions adjustments were needed in any case. In regards to our proposed debt ceiling adjustments, I hope more people can vote on it because we're still low on votes. But in general, I think a wider discussion should also soon be held, whether we should create some kind of group similar as we have for rate setting that will be more agile and will react to debt ceiling increases or decreases faster than the current processes. I think this would be beneficial in the current environment, which is more volatile. But also debt ceiling changes are associated with rate changes. So we may want to have this included in the same group that manages rates. Although, as I said, wider discussion needs to happen if community prefers this at all. I also think that less debt ceiling changes will be needed if we start implementing instant access module, so the debt ceiling one, for other wall types, but we still may need to configure parameters for instant access module itself. So I think the group could be beneficial here. I also want to mention there's another signal vote. I think Pros mentioned it, the one for Dust. The current winning vote is 2000 DAI, So the dust gets increased from 500 DAI to 2000 DAI. And if nothing changes until tomorrow in the signal pool, there will be there's going to be new dust value. I think it will follow into on-chain poll next week. Other than that, as I said, mostly involved in regular risk analysis work. What I'm also planning is to start preparing a simplified version of a budget proposal for risk, similar to one Sebastian released recently, in order to have risk being compensated by the DO, and also to communicate more clearly from our side about the team vision, vision regards to risk domain, and of course the milestones that we want to achieve. And that's basically all from our side.
Cool. Yeah, thank you for that, Primož. Just want to come back to one of the points you made regarding folding in the DC change stuff with the rates group. This is something we should kind of talk about more, because I kind of don't want us to end up in the situation where we're just sort of slowly centralizing power to one group, right? Or at least if we are doing that, like we're clear as to like why we're doing that, and that you know, and essentially like not only why, but just like how we can, I guess, remove that power in the future if we need to. So I just wanted to kind of remind people some things. So the rates group is writing a MIP, which kind of will help govern what that rates group kind of does, and potentially make it possible for there to be multiple rates groups, which would mean we could potentially see competing proposals if someone or some group wanted to set up an alternate group. And I'm kind of more comfortable with that, because I think that kind of safeguards some of the decentralization stuff around that, right? I don't want it to be fixed to like one group that can kind of gatekeep those changes. So yeah, I guess I'm not sure. I imagine most people aren't worrying about this, but if anyone is, like, it is something that we're thinking about actively. So yeah. Okay. I guess let's move on then. So community development and operational support. Amy, do you want to give us an update on those?
Yeah. So this week, yeah, I was working a little bit more on community development side. That we don't really have too many updates that are specific for this call, but I did want to mention that we now have the Maker Relay in audio form. So if you want to listen to it, feel free to share that link to anyone who wants to know what's happening in Maker these days. And then we did, I want to mention, in December, have like 13 events of community meetups. So we're still going strong in those. And if there are people interested in meetups, always an opportunity. For the operational support side, I did want to give the classic disclaimer that I am still an employee in the foundation. So there's kind of a limitation of things that I could work on or lead. And so yeah, I'm a little bit less flexible to what my dream operational support role is, but I'm luckily working very closely with Juan, and why he's also a really core component of why he should be a facilitator on the team with me. And the Autonomous MakerDAO group, who are just like clearing through a bunch of work, which is really awesome. So a lot of things I'm doing is coordination. It's not always obvious. And I just want to remind that to people as well. A lot of things that I see people in the community working on, luckily, you know, we don't get to evangelize that as much, but there's so much happening, and I'm really, I always want to remind people that this DAO is growing like at a really fast pace. A few kind of focuses I have personally is some administration stuff, that paying out grantees and things like that, as well as working a lot on kind of recruiting and onboarding. So it is a very unique situation to have recruiting for a DAO. You might have a much more structured process of onboarding in a regular organization. So that's an interesting area that I'm exploring right now. So right now I've been doing a lot of like one-on-one onboarding for contributors and grantees. So we get a sense of the, what that experience might look like in a DAO form. There are a few areas in identifying kind of and actively trying to get better at actively signaling some of the needs that I see in the community. And so we are looking for people in the community to lead some of these areas. One that Nick mentioned, kind of this independent audit security team. I think that's clearly a really big aspect of coordinating and leading audits. If someone has experience kind of in security and things like that, please come speak to me. Try to kind of, and written descriptions of these will be available in the forum soon. A legal domain, there are a few people that I am speaking with who are kind of interested in contributing on the legal side. So coming soon as well. And then this kind of HR function that I mentioned around like recruiting, hiring, potentially something like compensation guidance that I think we're gonna probably get into in the next few weeks in a lot more detail. And then that master list that I mentioned as a resource for knowing like all the projects, what's happening. The joke I made is that when you look at what Urine has, it has like 10 projects on their website around like what kind of teams and projects, and we have like 90. So it's not as easy for us to state everything that's happening and who's organizing it and what's active and inactive. It's going to be a pretty big master resource. And then David Longford-Wisdom and I are working on writing some emergency process procedures. So that's a big intake that we're going to hopefully have by the end of, by probably mid-February. There's a lot of pieces coming towards it. And then one point that I did see in the forum to clarify, right now, there's a lot of pieces that I think have to do with the difference between like interim solutions and then longer term solutions. A lot of it right now, I think there's a little hesitation when it comes to sometimes like, okay, the 100K, for example, the interim DAO budget, thinking of those as like smaller steps into something larger. So I think there is awareness. I don't know how public or like how clear that is to everyone, but there are teams that are working on longer term and like more kind of like structured ways of thinking about how the DAO will operate, not just on the operational side. But meanwhile, there are things that are coming that are just interim. So it might be proposed as so. So I'm just helping kind of craft the communications around that so that those things are clear to everybody. And that's it from our end.
Great, thank you, Amy. Anyone got any questions? Seems not. Yeah, I would kind of reiterate that as well, especially the part about interim solutions versus long-term solutions. A lot of the stuff we're doing in interim is not things we would want to do long-term, like for governance reasons, for like centralization reasons, and for lots of reasons. So yeah, please don't consider the interim things to be permanent or things that we should be doing permanently. Cool. All right. Let's have Juan then give an update on Collateral Calls and the various things he's been doing.
Yeah, sure. Quick word to echo what Amy was saying. I've been working with different groups, on several fronts, and hopefully we'll have more information next week. One of the topics is decentralizing. So yeah, anything that has to do with more permanent ways of being decentralized and organizing the whole thing. The other thing that Long already mentioned were on the tools section. So one of them is the MIP portal. So we're trying to build a UI so that people can navigate the MIPs, and hopefully we'll have an MVP really soon, and we can start playing with it and giving feedback, and have a tool we can actually use to understand the MIPs and how to work with it. On the MIPS tracker, I'm helping Peyton. He's doing all the heavy lifting, but helping him to, hopefully we can build a tool that mimics what we did for the collateral onboarding, so we can prioritize what MIPs we should focus on and communicate in a clear way to well, to the community and help ourselves as well and the different teams to see what's missing for each of them to go through. So that was the quick quick word. So jumping into the collateral calls, we had yesterday a call with the XDAI team with the MIP6 application stake. Very interesting. We also had Patricio from POAP, the proof of attendance protocol, that jumped in and explained why they moved to XDAI. The call is already on YouTube, so you can check it out on the MakerDAO YouTube channel. Next week we have a Harbor Trade Credit, so we'll have another real world assets call. They were with us in December, end of December, I believe. So we'll have them again with Seb, Leah, and Lucas from Centrifuge. So yeah, same time on Wednesday. And the following week, we'll have the team from Lido, which are bringing staked ETH 2.0 back to ETH 1.0. So a lot of questions for them as well. The agenda is coming soon. Anna and Snippets team, sorry for that. I don't have it yet. Are there any questions about this? All right, thank you guys.
Yeah, thank you, Juan. I I'm losing track of how many of the different meetings you are setting up, which is a good sign, probably. Cool. All right. So MIPS, Facilitators, Charles, do you want to give us a MIPS update?
Yes.
Let me give you the permissions. You go.
All right. So this week we had the inclusion polls go out for the 7 formally submitted proposals. The results came to a conclusion about an hour ago and are that all inclusion polls have passed except for the declaration of intent for Maker Protocol cover with Nexus Mutual. So that is MIP29, the PSM, MIP30, the firmable adapter, aka crop join, and sub-proposals for onboarding, Seb as a risk domain team, Sam as smart contracts, and Juan as a support facilitator. So today we're going to have Long for Wisdom perform the usual inclusion poll review and confirm that the 6 past polls are eligible for the monthly MIPS governance poll that will happen next Monday on the 18th. So next week we have the governance poll. It will be published for those 6 proposals if Long does confirm that. And the bundle poll will run for 3 days ending on Thursday, January 21st. And then next Thursday we'll have the governance poll review to confirm the outcome of that poll in preparation for the final MIPS executive vote that will happen on the 25th of this month. In terms of new proposals that have come in, we have 3 that are now in the conception phase. So the MIP editor will have to review these to make sure they conform to the standards of MIP 0 and the templates, and also work with the author. The author is Alexis, who has created a bunch of proposals these past couple of weeks. So we have MIP 33, which is a maker stability price module, which allows governance to defend the MKR price by pre-allocating DAI to buy at a predefined level. We have MIP 35, which is a PSM twist with compound mixed exposure, plus an addition of farming functionality. So it will basically be a PSM type system which converts USDC to DAI and DAI to USDC and use it to farm. And we have MIP 36, which is also peg stability related, compound governance leverage DAI. So this is controlled by governance and ultimately uses flash minting technique paired with MIP 35 and MIP 32 for DAI lending to leverage MakerDAO's position on CDAI if those proposals were to also be accepted. In terms of proposals in the request for comment stage, we have a new one proposed by Sam, which is the KEG streaming payments module at 34. It provides a smart contract implementation for streaming payments to Maker. We have MIP 26, which is still an RFC for the governance contract redesign. MIP 31 and MIP 32 also proposed by Alexis. MIP 31 is a technical proposal for an active reserve based on the Uniswap v2 contract. And MIP 32 is the PSM for the comp MX exposure, which would work with the proposals mentioned in conception. And as mentioned, it's just an extension of the PSM, allowing PSM to leverage USDC using CDAI, and converting USDC to CUSD using the same joint adapter. And in terms of sub-proposals, we had the onboarding of a new collateral type backed by B protocol, declarations of intent get proposed and is waiting on comments from everyone in the community. There's not a whole lot of new pre-MIP discussions, but there are ongoing ones. So the Liquidations 2.0 technical summary is still constantly being talked about in the thread. Other ones that are still being brought up are the throttled surplus buffer, a plan to launch a grand MKR yield farming program, sending DAI to a large market cap, and real estate tokenization and a delegation of authority proposal idea. In terms of collateral onboarding updates, there's a few awaiting an executive. That's package G success, the RWA, which Chris and Matt Rabinowitz just mentioned earlier. The Uniswap v2 pairs for USDC, ETH, and Wrapped Bitcoin, ETH. The Wrapped Bitcoin one had just passed the governance poll this week. In terms of the greenlight polls for new collateral types for the community to vet, we have WFIL, P1 drop, stake, staked ETH, and the two other Uniswap v2 pairs of DAI USDC and DAI USDT. And that is my update for that, but I do have another update, a little bit more of a bittersweet one. And that is after 2 years at working at the Maker Foundation, I've actually officially left. My last day was this Tuesday, but I will still be around in the community, and I'm still the MIP editor, as well as to keep supporting governance and MIPs, RWA, and DAO initiatives down the line. So just wanted to make that clear to everyone. And yep, that's it. That's my update for today, and thanks all.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Charles. Yeah, glad to hear you're sticking around in terms of the DAO. We'd not like to have to handle the MIP stuff on top of the governance facilitator stuff. All right, so let me just do the inclusion review then. As Charles said, all but one of the inclusion polls passed, and I see no reason why the ones that passed can continue to the MIPS bundle poll on Monday. The one that did not pass was the declaration of intent for Nexus Mutual Insurance for the Make protocol. So that one will not be included, and maybe resubmitted in the future, possibly, if the author wishes. All right, I think that covers that. That pretty much brings us to the end of our defined agenda. So if anyone has any questions or wants to debate anything for the last, well, we're still pretty early actually, so we've got a good 20 minutes if anyone wants to start something, sort of a reasonably meaty discussion. Cool. Well, don't all shout out at once. So maybe one of the things we could maybe mention is or maybe briefly discuss is the. So I think it was Amy mentioned onboarding, and I mentioned onboarding as part of my update. And I had a recent conversation with pretty much where we were kind of talking about onboarding and how, in some ways, it's kind of a lot easier than in traditional kind of settings, because we kind of have this community and there's a lot of kind of very motivated and smart people in the community, and that makes it quite easy to, I guess, find people that are experienced at various roles. Like pretty much, do you want to sort of briefly kind of talk about how you've found this to be, I guess?
You mean the budget thing?
Not explicitly about the budgeting thing, just more about like I remember you were kind of mentioning that you found it easy to, not easy, but you
Oh,
found
the
it easy
onboarding community people.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah, there's not really much to say, except for the part that, yeah, I mean, most of my team actually consists of community members. So when I see nice replies on forums, it's much easier to get in touch with them and then, see if they can cover part of the risk work. And that's usually because people who come to forums, they know something about Maker. Maker could be quite complicated. So, in the past, I remember we tried, tweeting out, people join risk team at Maker, but some ambitious people applied, but it's actually really hard to start from the beginning because, as I said, Maker, it could be complicated, and working on risk could be hard. And it's much easier if people know about it because we don't need to educate them. So yeah, I really feel great that the community participation is growing on forums, and just for example, last week there was a call about auctions. There was Andy who made really great insights, and I'm already in touch with him, and he's gonna hopefully help us with auction analytics, which is one of the angles we've been a bit missing in the past. Yeah, so that's actually my impression about how to deal with such things.
Anything else? Any other mandated actors, I guess, have any thoughts on this?
So,
do you want me to? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to say welcome to the smart contracts side, Sam. Looks like the first stage is complete there for you. Decentralized engineering is a very stressful thing. There's like an orchestration that generally happens. I hope that we can work together to make this succeed, and I look forward to it. So welcome aboard, and we'll see you making that executive next week. I'm excited for that.
Thanks, I appreciate that. It's good to be on board. Long, did you? Would it be okay? I can run over the PSM update or something. There's been some developments.
Yes, that's fine. Please go ahead. Yep.
Sure. So just a quick update of what's been going on with the PSM. Last week it got filled out, and then this week 1inch added the PSM as one of the liquidity providers, which is nice. So we've started seeing some trades going through there via 1inch, which is interesting. It seems like they're pretty quick, so yay. So next week we'll be crafting the community executive, and the plan is to increase the PSM debt ceiling to 80 million then, and attach a LERP module so that we can increase it by an additional 35 million per week up to the target 500 million after 12 weeks. So we think this is sort of a nice balance between like being a little cautious, but also moving toward the governance mandated goal. So yeah, that's it with PSM.
Cool.
Oh yeah, sorry, I forgot one thing. Just the UI will be ready soon as well. I almost forgot to mention that.
Great. Yeah. Yeah, I guess maybe going back to the kind of discussion. Like I guess how have you found onboarding in terms of the smart contract stuff? Like, do you have any thoughts on what makes it hard or difficult or easy or whatever?
Like me, as in like me coming on board?
Yeah, it's like your personal experience, I guess, with that process.
Careful, Sam, I'm listening.
Yeah, no, it's been great. I love working with everybody on the team, and it's just been a great experience so far. So yeah, I've enjoyed getting more and more involved over the past few months, and I'm happy that people like the work I'm doing. So yeah, excited to do more.
Great.
Yeah, Sam, we do have like planning meetings weekly and things like that. I would like to get you more involved in those things. So it just, I guess, depends on your time, and we'll figure something out.
Yep, for sure. I'll be there.
I also want to mention, I think a lot of things that have been working for us is when you're kind of hiring through community, it's much like, I think that one of the principles is organic first. So instead of putting a JD out and then people apply and you go through it, you kind of say like, here's some stuff that needs to be done, or people self-identify and say like, this stuff that I think should be done, and just do it. I think Sam is like the master of that, like, oh, here it is, and he like presents something. So the way that I think if we want to kind of continue that, we're going to, a lot of things that we've been seeing that's been working is having something like Autonomous MakerDAO, when we kind of identify a few key areas, and then being able to kind of like people fill with their skill sets, just kind of fill in. Maybe once or twice I've seen where it doesn't, people's like skill sets doesn't necessarily fit exactly, or and we've kind of like recalibrated a little bit. So sometimes you might see that, but usually that's been working for us. It's kind of like a slow and steady route rather than a like, let's just bring on people and have like a formal recruiting committee or something. But that's just kind of the state we're in right now.
Yeah, I think this is something I've sort of kind of noticed and said for a little while. Like up until this point, we haven't really had like a sort of, I mean, even right now, we don't have like a huge flood of people like coming in. But what we do seem to have is, you know, like every sort of month that passes, we pick up like 1 or 2 more people who kind of are competent and like awesome and kind of stay, which is really great to see, because it's like, it kind of shows that, well, I mean, in my opinion, it shows that the protocol kind of has sticking power in terms of making people enjoying working for it and wanting to stay. But I think it's like, but yeah, it's just kind of interesting how it evolves over time, right? Because I mean, I've been here for quite a while now, right? And yeah, it's good to see. That's all. Yeah, I'm not tearing up, but it is cool. It's, I don't know. It's, yeah. Cool. All right. Well, we're certainly at the hour, so if there's any other questions or anything people want to talk about, please feel free. Yes, if no one kind of comes up with anything in the next sort of 5 minutes or so, then we can maybe end early for a change. I guess so maybe it's worth mentioning some of the like auction stuff a little bit more again, because we had that as a fairly major part of last week's meeting. So we saw the kind of poll this week pass for updating the BEG and the TTL, I believe it was, for the FLAP auctions. Obviously, we haven't seen that implemented yet, so we don't know how much of an effect it's going to have. But I mean, has anyone sort of been paying attention, like watching the auctions and have any idea if it's gotten any worse or better in the last little while?
Yeah, I only posted this in our sort of mandated actors chat, but I was following those flap auctions. You know, I had the conjecture last week that it was because of gas prices that we weren't seeing people do the flap and then the tend to take that sort of initial bid, and that's why we ended up in this sort of zero bid scenario. And I can't remember, it was probably like 2 days ago. The gas prices fell pretty substantially, so that they were like, you know, not cheap like they were a year ago or something, but they were, I think, around like 60 or 50 gwei or something. And all of a sudden, the zero bidding auction keeper and the other auction keeper that was participating prior to gas prices going high, both came back and started flapping exactly how you'd expect. So it's sort of, I think that's a pretty clear signal that the BEG is definitely set too low for that type of behavior in high gas scenarios. So I'm feeling really good about the parameters.
Yeah, great. That's good to hear, because it's obviously in all the things we've seen so far, like auctions are one of the things that makes me kind of nervous about well, not nervous in general, but like it's one of the things you kind of end up keeping an eye on based on the previous things we've seen.
I guess with a moment of silence, I'll say, has anyone put any thought into the idea of trying to find a community member that would be willing to bite liquidations for the rest of the auction types out there? Like, so basically we would end up like reimbursing them for bites or give them some amount of money to call bites or something like that, at least until we get to liquidations 2.0 where we have an incentive mechanism.
This is kind of similar to what like B Protocol was proposing, like Yaron and things. It's possible they'd be willing to run a bot to do that. Like they were kind of talking about it with in relation to keeping like, you know, low debt vaults right below, or that have like close to the dust limit, right, or below the dust limit. But maybe they'd be willing to do it more generally.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Like
Yeah,
we can subsidize the dust. Yep, go on.
Yeah, I was going to say that this is kind of going to become a bit more of a problem. These requiring these altruistic bites. So I'm developing the PSM flipper as well, and currently the design requires these altruistic biters. So yeah, something like Brian's saying, the Keeper network or DSS cron or something, we will need to address this in a more permanent way.
So Liquidations 2.0 will have direct governance controlled incentivizations of barks, essentially. So we will be able to pay those out directly. It's the interim that we need to worry about, and then any new modules that we add on that don't conform to that.
Right.
I know Yarn's code from B Protocol that he whipped up was essentially allowing a call of bite with rebate rather than just bite, and then basically filling up a smart contract with some DAI to pay out those gas rebates.
Yeah, so it's essentially like a wrapper contract around the bite, which can be filled by DAI with DAI by anyone, and then we'll provide rebates.
Yeah, that's actually essentially what DSS cron does. It'll provide these rewards for anybody who wants to call bite.
I obviously like the idea, but it also seemed like there were a few people willing to contribute DAI, which was really neat and unexpected. B Protocol being one of them.
Yeah, I feel like we maybe need to get an idea of how much it would cost to do the you know, for the subsidy to subsidize what we want. I mean, we need to figure out like, you know, what we would want to subsidize, and then how much that costs, right? So yeah, I guess if anyone is interested in investigating that more thoroughly, please do.
If we're throwing out ideas for new community roles, I think Chris brought it up last week, but one thing that we've identified might be very helpful for the system is to have a more of a product manager type of role that works with, you know, front-end developers and smart contracts and, you know, documentation developers and MIP editors to kind of take care of a project from the full life cycle. So we can add a new smart contract, but without the documentation, like new developers can't come in and quickly get up to speed on it. Integrators, if it's not documented, may just decide, you know, it's not worth taking the time to integrate. So documentation is important. The UIs are important. One of the things that we realized on Black Thursday was that we didn't have a good UI for the auctions. We just kind of assumed that people would come in and use them. So, you know, having one that can control all of the aspects around, or not control, but facilitate all of the aspects around a release of a new item would be insanely beneficial. So the foundation kind of takes care of this now, but I just want to toss it out there as an idea that that's an opportunity for someone to coordinate.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. It's definitely something that is. I mean, so I sort of have it like in the governance domain as well, right? Like we kind of want to document all these all the parameters, like all the various knobs that governance has to fiddle with.
Right. Every time we add a new module on, a new adapter or something like that, somebody's got to learn that when they come in to get their head on the system. And so every time we add a new thing, if it's not streamlined, that's another cognitive overhead item. So documentation is important, and then just accessibility for the community and integrators.
So this actually, so since we're talking about new roles, this reminds me of something else. Someone, I think it was Sweka, posted on the forum, kind of doing an informal poll as to whether we wanted to, whether MakerDAO should employ like a recruiter, which is like essentially someone, I mean, people know what recruiters do, right? Go out and find people to do the things that we want, that we need people to do, and then at least, make an introduction between them to the DAO, right? So yeah, there's actually quite a lot of things that we should maybe be thinking about employing people to do. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that actually makes onboarding easier as well. Like if you have expectations a little clearer up front, then it makes it easier to sort of source and find people who can sort of fill those things.
Yeah, because I think we were kind of commenting earlier on like the community onboarding things, and I think that works great for some. I think that works better for like some things than others, right? Like I think it works, as Primus said, it works quite well for risk. I think it works fairly well for governance. It seems to work okay for smart contracts, maybe as well. But for some of those like kind of softer roles, it's maybe not ideal.
Just to add to that, a lot of the things that I've been fielding, the interim solutions versus long-term solutions, bringing that back, what the DAO can offer, things like that. So we're not like a traditional company that offers XYZ and this, and I've been having a lot of conversations kind of setting expectations in terms of, yeah, you get, receive, and die. There's different ways you can coordinate. So I think it will also help once that is a little bit more ossified, or I guess like clearly kind of decided on in the DAO, and then we can go ahead and be more active on it. So maybe I'm just like super patient about it, but I think that's why the being active in the conversations around these are pretty important, because it starts setting what's the benefits for working in the DAO.
Yeah, that's definitely important, because there's obviously a lot of things that a DAO is, at least initially, going to have trouble with dealing with, right, in terms of like benefits and things for people in the US and a bunch of other stuff. So we need to kind of figure out either which bits of like what aspects of a DAO employee are great, or we need to kind of just recognize that there are some things we can't cover and compensate for that, in terms of salary or something else, right? Yeah, I think working for DAO is pretty cool in general, though. All right, it's 1:15, so that's maybe time to wrap up, unless anyone has any final notes or any things they want to share. Okay, seems like everyone is good. So yeah, I will talk to you all hopefully next week, same time as usual. Yeah, thank you everyone for coming.
Right, thanks.
Thank you, Long. See you next week.